Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Licensing Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Lina Savikiene, Chairman of the Licensing Committee. To my right is a Councillor Susan Welbury, Vice Chair of the Licensing. So before we start the meeting, I need to run through a few housekeeping details. I would like to remind everyone in attendance this afternoon that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Please ensure when you are addressing this meeting that you do so through the microphone system all the times. Please also ensure that you speak into the microphone and closely and clearly as possible. Mobile phones should be turned off or switched to silent mode. So there is no one. Now we'll move to part 1 of agenda, the preliminaries. Are there any apologies?
Yes, Madam Chair, apologies have been received from Councillors Neil Drayton, Andy Izard and Stephen Woodliffe.
Does any member wish to declare any interest in respect of any items of the agenda? No? Do I have permission to sign the minutes of the Licensing Committee meeting held on 10th of June 2025? Thank you. We can do that. Are there any questions from members of public received 2 clear working days prior to this meeting?
There are none, Madam.
Thank you. Part 2 agenda items, Licensing Act 2003 draft statement of licensing policy. The agenda item this afternoon is the Licensing Act 2003 draft statement of licensing policy, which starts on page 3 of the agenda pack. The Senior Licensing Officer, Anna McDowell, will present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Are you happy? Is everybody happy that I present my report, but where there's a point that may be open for discussion, we pause to discuss it as we go along? Are you happy to do that, or do you just want me to present and then discuss everything at the end? Yeah, do questions as we go along. Okay, thank you, Chair. So this report considers the consultation responses to the proposed revised statement of licensing policy for Boston Borough Council. It's recommended that the committee considers the responses and determines any required amendments before approving the final policy for referral to council to seek adoption and publication. This recommendation has been made to ensure that the council upholds its statutory duty to consult on and publish a statement of licensing policy every 5 years. The Committee of the Licensing Authority convened on the 10th of June to consider a draft revised policy detailing the principles that the Council will apply when dealing with matters under the Licensing Act. At that meeting, members discussed the proposed amendments and approved their inclusion into the draft policy. It was determined that consultation would be carried out for an 8-week period, with any responses to the consultation being returned to a future committee for consideration. The consultation with stakeholders commenced on the 23rd of June. Lincolnshire Police have submitted comments in respect of the proposed policy, and the full content of their policy, of their feedback, is attached to Appendix 1, and an amended version of the draft statement of policy has been prepared to demonstrate where the consultation responses would sit if you determine to add them to it. And these consultation responses have been added in green text for ease of reference. However, in summary, the police are asking for consideration to be given to including additional wording in the following areas. They've asked us to include additional wording at section 4, which details the expectation that applicants demonstrate knowledge of the area in which they will operate, to include information relating to the Public Space Protection Order, and that can be seen That can be seen on page 24 of the report bundle. Further to that, they've requested that we consider developing a pool of conditions for applicants to access, along with additional wording to the policy to encourage applicants to have regard to the document when considering the steps that they would like to consider to promote the licensing objectives. The suggested wording from Lincolnshire Police recommends a fixed number of conditions. However, it's considered that this number shouldn't actually be set in policy, and that's to ensure that appropriate use of conditions which relate to each application are based on its own merits and are relevant to that premises and their business operation. It's recommended that the pool of conditions is provided as a standalone document rather than be appended to the policy, and that is to ensure that we can easily update or amend it without the need of a policy review. An example of the pool of conditions is at page 11 of your report bundle, which is Appendix 2. And this is something that we would be able to provide to applicants as part of the application pack. We would be able to put it on our website, and also people would be able to access that by contacting us directly. And these are conditions that are very, very common to see on premises licenses, but as you will see, not all conditions will relate to all business operations. Did anyone have any questions on that? No. The police have also requested that a guidance point is added at section 4.1.3 to encourage applicants to consider that windows are kept 75% free from obstruction. This would include window decals, shelving units, and anything that obstructs the view into the premises. If the committee are minded to add this information into the policy, it will also be reflected within the PSPO section at 35.3 of the document. They've also requested additional wording at paragraph 4.4, where the policy references age verification processes, and they've asked that we incorporate all forms of government issued digital ID into the accepted list of documents. Their grounds for asking for this is that the government are looking at proceeding with digital ID. This is something that's not been confirmed as yet, but it's expected that there will be an announcement later this month to the effect that digital ID will be incoming. And it just covers us that where we've got age verification processes, rather than having your standard passport, driving licence, it covers everything that people could possibly be providing to evidence that they are old enough to purchase alcohol. It's also been requested that paragraphs are added to section 13 relating to how the council will review licences where there is evidence of criminal activity which falls outside the direct scope of the Licensing Act. The police have requested a statement that the licensing authority will take a serious view of criminal activity and strongly consider revocation where certain illegal activities are evidenced. For example, a premises may not breach licence conditions, but where there is evidence of sales of illicit drugs and medications, organised crime activities, or sale of illicit goods and immigration offences, that the council's first consideration will be a very serious view of revoking the licence. This just sort of formalises what committee have done in the past. It's something that's standard practice, whereas there are immigration offences, trading standards offences, we have generally taken a revocation stance, and it just sort of formalises it in policy. But obviously, continuing that, every review is looked at in its own capacity, and any decision on a review would be proportionate to what the evidence is. The police have also requested added guidance under section 35.3, and this is to encourage applicants who are selling alcohol for consumption off the premises from businesses located within the public space protection order to consider offering up a condition of affixing waterproof labels to cans and bottles of beer, lager and cider, or alternatively all alcohol, which details the name and address of the premises. However, These matters are for the consideration of the committee and may be amended as required before submission to council, and a full copy of the revised policy is at Appendix 3 to the report. In conclusion, there's a statutory requirement to review the Licensing Act Statement of Policy every 5 years. This must be completed by January 2026. Consultation has been carried out in accordance with the requirements of the Act, and consultation responses have been put before the committee for consideration. Adoption of the policy is a council function which cannot be delegated to Cabinet or committee, and therefore committee is requested to recommend their final policy be presented to council for adoption. Thank you, Chair. That concludes.
Councillor Gleeson.
Yep, no. Page 5, 2.1.2, the paragraph, so there's one that starts the addition of a paragraph to section 13 so we're adding things that aren't licensing offences, but we say the sale of alcohol to minors, but surely that would be a licensing offence. So,
Yeah, it is a licensing offence, but it's a criminal offence, but it's not under the premises license conditions.
yeah,
If that makes sense.
yeah, thank you for that. Apart from that, that was just yeah, I picked up reading it. Yeah, I have no personal problems with altering our policy to reflect those items requested by the police, but as long as we feel, and I don't have the skill to know that they're enforceable or effective. So, you know, I've got no issue with the idea as long.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Anna. As I read through this, it was quite sad, really, from the consultation period. Is it right then we only had one response? I wondered how many people we consulted, please.
We consult all the responsible authorities because that's what's prescribed in the Act. The consultation is also open to the public on our website, so anybody who's visiting our consultation page, we consult parish councils and also members of the trade where relevant. So it would have been sent out to licensees that have registered for email updates with us. But yeah, that's and solicitors, representatives like licensing agents. I could provide you with a full list.
No, that's okay.
Later, but yeah,
I suppose one of the most important factors is that the police reply. And as I read through, obviously Lincolnshire Police covers Lincoln, and some of these things have been applied in Lincoln. Many of the things I probably should have thought about when I read the original report, for example, windows where there's obstructions, where it has been mentioned there's always something hiding behind obstructions. The things about the labels on various sort of alcohol being sold. So, in my opinion, all those suggestions look pretty good. And have they been trialled already in Lincoln? Please.
I don't know. I don't believe that the window obstruction and the waterproof labels have come directly from Lincoln. I think that's something that Lincolnshire Police generally ask for through mediation. I don't know if they're operable in Lincoln or not. I couldn't confirm.
So I would say that I agree with the recommendations, but I do take on board what Councillor Gleeson said. It's all right having rules, but we have to enforce them, don't we? Or make sure people are aware of the consequences. So thank you for your hard work on this.
Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, with reference to page 49, and we have this applicants are expected to implement measures to mitigate any detrimental impact on licensing objectives, and you've got a list there. Why don't we make the one in green compulsory? This relates to what Councillor Baxter was saying. Why should it be advisory? And why should it not be obligatory? So I would suggest that we do accept that, because it would help to identify certain premises where, you know, the prolific drinkers are getting their stuff from. I thought that would be very useful and helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Cantwell. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. The Licensing Act doesn't make provision for us to mandate licence conditions other than those that are statutory. So we would have to go through it. Lincolnshire Police would have to ask for it, and then the applicant can either agree to it, or if they refuse, or if they don't want to agree, we would then put it to a licensing subcommittee to make that decision on whether it goes on. Thank you.
Happy with the answer, Jonathan?
Yes.
Councillor
Yeah,
Cantwell,
I'm very
please.
happy. Thank you.
I had two points to raise. One was on this 75% of windows facing into reload areas. I think my issue with that is I question how enforceable that actually is, and I question how specific that section of the policy needs to be, because how are we measuring how this is covered? Are we including the borders of the window? Is it just the glass? I think it leaves a lot to be questioned. And equally, is this something the police are actively going to take on board and start inspecting windows, start measuring how much of it is taken up by posters? Is this something that the borough is going to be expected to look at as?
It would be between Lincolnshire Police and the licensing section to check that. However, if they don't comply, it would then be for them to put the review process in. But they would have, Lincolnshire Police would have to have very good grounds that the licensing objectives weren't being promoted by way of not complying with that condition. And that's where it gets a little bit less enforceable. So your points are very valid. It's something that they've asked for a number of years. I think what we have to remember is this will only cover premises that are licensed for the retail sale of alcohol. So all of those that aren't licensed can carry on covering the windows, and we have no control over those premises. So those premises that aren't licensed that carry on criminal activity, we can't stop them doing those window decals and obstructing the view into the premises. But yeah, how enforceable it is, I don't know. It would have to be something that would have to stand up in a court to see if it was an enforceable condition on appeal. Can't answer your question any further than that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I kept thinking of the 7.5 ton weight restrictions that the county put on a lot of roads, which are actually totally unenforceable, and have had totally no impact because the people driving down those roads in vehicles with higher tonnage know that they're never ever going to be enforced. So I was just worried that we're putting in something to the policy which is actually going to have very little result on the ground. My other question was,
Minor variations are quite regulated in how we act on them. So the process is somebody can put a minor variation in. There are restrictions on what they can apply for. So for example, you can't extend the capacity or the hours for the sale of alcohol under a minor variation, but you can move the hours between certain hours. You can add regulated entertainment. You can change the plan. We will determine applications based on whether we have any objections. If there are objections, we simply can't grant it. So it's quite easy. If the police or any other responsible authority object to that, we just reject it. There's no provision for hearings with minor variations. So it's quite a standardised process, really. We can also decide whether or not we would accept that application. So, for example, if somebody put a minor variation in and they wanted to, good example is, so a little pub wants to have live music till 3 o'clock in the morning, the licensing officers could decide that that actually poses a risk to the public nuisance licensing objective. So we could reject that and say, no, you've got to put a full variation in and go through the whole 28-day consultation period. So we have discretion on what to accept and what not to accept. But it is, again, no objections, it's just granted. I think that's what we're alluding to there. Does that answer your question?
Especially someone who's not familiar with licensing. I just thought it might be helpful just to explain a bit more about what is clarified under.
Would it be helpful if we put a link in there to our web page where there's guidance on minor variations? Would that help? Yeah, I'll add that to the policy then. Thank you.
Councillor Velbury.
Just coming back to the waterproof labels, I can't quite see why the police have put that in. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's a very nice idea, but who's going to police it? And there's no legal standing in it. Are we just verbaging again and adding things in that we've got no hope of enforcing?
I think for me, and I know my manager's sort of a similar opinion, is we have to look at what's proportionate. So we look at the Section 182 guidance, and this is something that I trot out at every hearing. Section 182 guidance is quite clear that the licensing authority can't seek to control customers once they've left the direct remit of the premises. So we have to be quite careful that we're not going to do that. Also, any license condition that's put onto a premises license has to both be proportionate and enforceable to what it intends to achieve, but you have to weigh that up against the potential burden on the license holder. So whilst people may offer it, I don't know what the terms of enforceability are for it. And I don't know what Lincolnshire Police, what their action would be if they were found to, so for example, if it was found that people were consuming alcohol 10-minute walk from the licensed premises, how they would then use that information to take action against the license holder. It's something that I don't know how much they would utilise that license condition in trying to control the issues. So I think that's probably the most I can give you on that.
Well, that's my feelings entirely. It seems a bit of a waste of time putting it in. I can't understand why, when we just can't enforce it, and for the very reasons that you've just explained.
Yeah,
thanks.
Anyone else? Councillor Evans.
Even though it could be pointless in the long run. If I could make an observation about something else, maybe this isn't the right time, but I'm going to anyway. Having attended many subcommittees, it strikes me that the applicants don't seem to have read anything regarding licensing at all. And maybe there's something that we could do to make them take on board the rules a little bit more. Maybe something like a questionnaire form, which is obvious and easy, but to answer it, you either cheat or you know the stuff. But at least if they've cheated, they have at least looked up the answers. Because I'm sure all of us that have sat on subcommittees, sometimes you want to ask a question and you can't because the person clearly hasn't any idea what it is they're talking about. So maybe it's something for a future time, but something along those lines might be helpful.
Where we send application packs out, they are sent guidance on the licensing objectives and given examples of conditions. There's also information on our website that feeds into that. There's a link to the policy. Unfortunately, people don't read what you send them. And there's also an online application facility through gov.uk. And if people choose to use that route, it doesn't provide them with all of our documentation. We've had it before where we'll reject applications and we'll say to people, you know, you might want to think a bit more carefully about what you're going to put in your operating schedule. Some people take all of that information on board, others don't. So it's not for lack of trying. they just, some people just put their application in and hope for the best without actually taking into account the area,
Right.
what measures would be appropriate for their business to promote the licensing objectives. It's a 50-50. Some are fantastic and some just don't really put much effort into their application at all. So we do try.
We do indeed try, but okay, thanks for that.
And are we done with recommendations or do we have anything else?
No, that's everything that I've got to run through. Did you want me to run through them point by point and then you can
Yes, please.
vote on them? Run through in here. So we have,
Before we do that, we just need a proposer and seconder as well. Before
right.
you actually run.
Do I have a proposer? Okay. Thank you.
Right, so the first point was the inclusion of additional wording at section 4 to acknowledge the PSPO and include information that alludes to us having a PSPO. Did people want to, is everybody for or?
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
The pool of conditions.
Everyone is happy with them. Yeah.
The 75% window free from obscuration.
Agreed.
No. The additional wording about digital ID.
Agreed.
Criminal activity that falls outside the scope of the Licensing Act that we will consider revocation.
Agreed.
And the waterproof labels. You agree?
Should we vote?
Yeah, probably. Do you want to vote on that one?
Yeah, let's vote on that. Thank you. So thank you. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favor? Against? That concludes this afternoon's business, so we'll now close the meeting. Thank you for your attendance. Sorry for today.